Now, ADHD, or Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, is the most common behavioural disorder in the UK. It affects an estimated 2 to 5% of children and young people. The symptoms include hyperactivity, a short attention span, and impulsive behaviour. But what about adults with the condition? Not everyone agrees that the symptoms used to diagnose children also apply to those aged over 18. Well, now a leading ADHD charity is calling for the NHS to speed up that system by assessing and referring adults quicker and helping those with this hidden disability. Nicola Beckford went to meet a woman who was diagnosed with the condition later in life.
I always felt like an alien. I just thought it was because I don't know what I thought really, but I did always feel like an alien. I was incredibly popular when I was 5, I still remember it really well. And after that it was all downhill really, I was always a bit of an outsider. Pops, come in. Pablo. Do you know, I was talking to my mum. What happened when I was, before I met the psychiatrist who diagnosed me, my mum had to fill in a form saying what I was like as a child. And I was really, oh God, she's just going to say you were perfectly normal in every respect, my dear. And it's all a lot of old nonsense, is what I thought she was going to say. And she, to my amazement, she put, we always knew. There was something about her. And, you know, she felt quite guilty, really, that she hadn't picked up on it. But when I said, like what? She said, well, like the way you would lose things, like the way you don't look after things, and the way you don't take care of yourself, which is an issue I still have today. You know, like eating, washing, things that normal people do without any effort, apparently. They're all things that I have to make myself do, and I don't necessarily succeed. It all comes from mental disorganisation. It's like things are not stored in a filing cabinet, which I sort of imagine in normal people. They're like, appointment, I'll file it here. And I'll go appointment, you know, and it's like instead of having a filing cabinet, I've just got a bucket. My head's just a bucket with everything I need to know and need to think. It's just thrown in this big jumbly way. This is one of the gifts of ADHD, is I wake up every morning a new woman. Today is the day when I'm going to do everything right. I'm going to, you know, I'm not going to beat myself up, but I'm going to move on. I'm going to empty that cardboard box, and then I'm just going to get really on top of the important things. And every night I go to bed a broken woman because it's all gone wrong again. But it's okay, because the next morning I start all over again. It is like being reborn every day with all the hope that comes with that.
So the office is downstairs?
Yeah, very short commute.
All right, should we have a look?
Quite dangerous commute,
okay.
So be
all right,
careful.
You go first then.
All right, so here we are. It's gone funny. My pride and joy. So I did put some thought in how I wanted it to be, and one of the things I don't like is if you go into a lot of your computer repair places, then you can't see what's happened to your computer. They go, oh yes, we'll take it out the back, and then it disappears into some unknown area. So that's why, you know, we fix them in front of your eyes. What has happened today, Jack?
Okay, I got some notes. Mo came in today.
Oh yeah, well, how did that all turn out?
How does ADHD affect you as a businesswoman, would you say?
My social skills, though lousy in some senses, work really well for me in this sort of business where you want people to trust you and you know, believe that you have their best interests at heart, which I do. The place where it works against me is my diabolical procrastination when it comes to invoicing people, updating the books. I mean, this business is the most important thing I've done in my life, really, the thing I'm most proud of. And I know that I have to be on top of every computer that comes in here, and yeah, the feeling that I'm not on top of them does cause me horrible feelings of out of controlness. Hello. Oh, it's Evelyn, come in. This is my friend Evelyn. She runs a shop over the road.
Oh, nice to meet you. I'm Nicola, nice to meet you.
I'd never really thought what's wrong with me. I just thought if I tried harder, I could be ordinary or normal or, you know, correct. What I take is methylphenidate, which is commonly known as Ritalin, though. When I forget to take them and I'm down in the workshop, the lads generally say, have you taken your pills? Before I know anything's up. Because what I tend to do is thrash and get overwhelmed with things. I mean, thrashing is like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, oh no, I'm going to do this, and generally a feeling of being completely overwhelmed with all the stuff you've got to do and not being able to prioritise it and get on with it. But in the first flush of Ritalin stimulation, you're like, right, let's sort this damn mess out. And it gives you that power to just be focused.
I think I'll fancy, I have no idea what it is. Sorry, I'm just jumping in
it's
there.
It's ordinary tea, I think, with
just with
lemon.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I'm very all or nothing.
I'm going to have it sans milk.
And if I meet someone I like, and it's like, I only know you 5 minutes, let's have an intense friendship. And it was always like that with men. It's if they've got something that sparks me, I'm like, this is brilliant. Let's do everything together and then possibly get married. And, you know, obviously this is very, I've heard this is very terrifying for men. They go, oh, steady on. I don't even know your name. But what tends to happen, actually, if they get over their fear, which some people don't, so that's the end of it. But once they get past that terror, they get caught up in it. The crazy magical world of living impulsively and stuff. And then by the time they're coming around to thinking, actually, I really like you, by that time I've got bored, unfortunately. But in my space, I'm actually quite intolerant. And you might think, well, she lives in complete mess. But, you know, if somebody else comes and puts a bit of their mess in the middle of my mess, it drives me crazy. But I mean, why would somebody sensible have a relationship with me? Do you know what I mean? Why would they? I'm like girlfriend material, but I'm not long-term material. Because people don't want to live this way, I suppose, in the long term.
Would you prefer not to have ADHD?
No, I would sell it. I wouldn't get rid of it for £1 million, or maybe 2 million, but not 1 million. No, how could I wish it? It's like, it's not a choice, you know. And if you say, I wouldn't want that about me, then you're rejecting part of yourself. So no, I couldn't say that, no, I don't want ADHD, because I wouldn't be me, I'd be somebody else. And I'd probably be tidier, and I'd probably have a lovely career in the city, and I probably wouldn't want to meet me in the street, you know, because I'm who I am.
Helen there, the very charming Helen, talking to our very own Nicola Beckford. Well, we can talk to Andrea Bilbo, who's the Chief Executive of ADDISS, which is the National Attention Deficit Disorder Information and Support Service. Dr. Maria Jalmbrandt is a clinical psychologist for us. And in Bristol, Jonathan Lanham-Cook is a mental health nurse consultant and has ADHD. And Olympic judo athlete Ashley McKenzie, who also has ADHD. Thank you very much for joining us all. Andrew, I'm going to begin with you, because while we were watching that film with Helen, you were saying, that's exactly me. I can see everything she's doing, I can recognise. What's it like to live like Helen was living, like you're living? Is it chaotic? Do you feel supported?
It's very frustrating, because you know what you want to do, but you just can't do it. You know, I mean, I run a national charity, and you know, I find it overwhelming, but I'm driven because we are driven by passion, and we're goal focused, and I feel very passionately about helping people who have this condition. But if you walked into my office, and you know, the people who work around me, you know, they just always laugh because I have piles everywhere. But I think, probably like Helen, that although it's chaotic and there are piles, I know if you want a piece of paper, I know exactly which pile it's in, because I have a good visual memory. So we do struggle with working memory, but visual memory is quite good.
And you mentioned, of course, you're an OBE, you've been awarded an OBE, and you were talking about self-esteem and how ADHD affects your self-esteem because you're not perhaps working in the world the same way as people who don't have it.
That's right, and you know, I don't really have very good self-esteem, I don't think, and I think my whole life it's not been too good. And so, you know, being given this award, it's quite strange because I don't feel like I deserve it. Do you know, that's all part of the condition. I really don't, although other people tell me that I do, but I don't feel that I have done enough to you know, achieve that.
When were you diagnosed?
Oh, probably in my 30s, it was quite some time ago. And I think it's common, as like most parents that I speak to, when your children are diagnosed, because of course, you know, it's only about 20 years ago we started diagnosing children. A lot of adults have gone through their whole lives struggling, not knowing. And so, just like me, our children were diagnosed and we realised, you know, that's why I've struggled my whole life. That's why I had problems in school. That's why I had friendship problems. It's just, you know, and that's why it impacted on my education.
Maria, this is a problem, isn't it? If there are so many adults who, and we're going to talk to Jonathan, who had a very similar story in the sense he was concerned about his son and found out his condition. But adults not being diagnosed, why is this?
It's a very good question, actually. No, adults are struggling to get diagnosed. As Andrea said, it's a very new condition for adults. For children,
but it's not new, is it? It's new to be diagnosed.
Correct. So
right.
For children, it's been around for 20 years. For adults, it only became, I would say, the last 5 to 10 years recognised that adults can also have the condition. And services are lagging behind. In 2008, the NICE guidelines came out and suggested, actually they proposed having specialist services for adults. Sadly, there was no money attached to that. And so the services are lagging behind very much in finding the resources to set up adult services.
Okay, Jonathan, I just mentioned that you yourself had a very similar situation to Andrew, as in you were trying to figure out some help for your son when you realised that perhaps ADHD, the symptoms or the recognised symptoms were what you were experiencing as well.
Absolutely. When I looked at the tool for assessing him, I suddenly realised that was my life already, and there it was. And I'd struggled for many years, right from childhood, and not realised what was wrong with me. And I think when I got to that point, it was a breakthrough. And I have to say now, like on the film, like Helen mentioned on the film, I'm so glad that I know that I have ADHD. For me, the problem isn't really that I have ADHD. I mean, I quite love my ADHD now, but is that I didn't know I had it, and therefore I was dealing with the consequences rather than the problem. And so I was dealing with mental health issues and various other stuff that had plagued me. And now I don't, you know, I'm able to work with that, and that's been fantastic.
I mean, you're 50 now and were diagnosed 2 years ago, I understand. Yes. So how would ADHD, without you knowing you had it, how had it impacted in your life? Can you give us some examples?
Well, my life has been interesting, to say the least. I mean, I was a bright child. I had a scholarship away to school. I was expelled. I've lurched from job to job. I'm an unreliable person to be around when I'm not untreated or unrecognised as having ADHD. I've used alcohol and drugs in the past to try and manage it. I've had broken relationships. The list is endless, and and I just didn't realise what was wrong with me, and I think I just was locked in this torture of thinking, what the hell is the matter with me?
Ashley, let's talk about you and your diagnosis. And you were diagnosed at quite a young age, and judo helped you. Tell us your story.
My story, yeah, I was basically just bad as a kid. I have two brothers, Aaron and Jack, and they were good, you know what I mean, when I was younger. And I was like, why am I always the bad one? So for me, I went through a stage when I was young, like I didn't really know what was going on. I was at home with my mum. My mum would always tell me off, and I just wonder what was going on. And anyway, she sent me to a place called Conlon Gardens for 6 months, which diagnosed me with it. And after that, I went to a special school, and she wanted to, even though I was in a special school in Stormont House, I still was getting sent home maybe 60 times in 1 year, like still exclusions. And it was a bit hard for me. So my mum wanted me to take up a sport, and then I basically was playing on the street one day with a Pokemon card. Guy kind of swapped it. He took it off me. I punched him. He ended up throwing me, and I was like, wow. Anyways, I looked on internet throwing, and judo come up. So I went to the nearest judo club, and at the time I was trying to do my GCSEs and my SACs, and I was getting golds in judo, but then I was not getting really good results in school, and I was like, this is not for me. But it was controlling me, because obviously judo is about discipline. You rate, you respect your partner, you shake your partner's hand. And I kind of leveled out at a sense of, I knew that I was good, so when I went to judo, I'd be more better because I could do it. In school, I couldn't read a lot, do you know what I mean? I couldn't concentrate for more than 30 minutes in a class, so why am I doing something that I'm not good at? To me, that's no point. I'm not a half-hearted guy, do you know what I mean? So for me, when I went to judo, I knew I could throw someone, and I'd get my belt quick. I went from red belt straight to orange. I skipped a couple belts, you know what I mean? So I was always doing good in judo. So for me, my ADHD just kind of come all at once, and I thought in school, like, it wasn't my thing. And then I had troubles outside school, so I started bringing my ADHD into British judo, because I got banned from British judo for 6 months, 3 months, 1 month. And I don't think they understood in the beginning of, it wasn't just me, something like I would do something, meaning I had to do it. It's like I couldn't control it. Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying being bad is good. I'm not saying that. And I'm not saying because you've got ADHD an excuse, but some of the things that was just literally compulsory, I couldn't stop from doing.
Indeed. Ashley, I also want to ask, because many will be very interested, about medication. Did you take medication when you were a child?
Yes, I took Ritalin as well.
Can you take it now? Because
no, I can't. I had to stop it when I got into the squad at the age of 12. I had to stop it because it's a drug. It's an enhanced drug. So I had to stop that. So I went on like a rocky kind of road from about 12 to 14. I was just up and down. My sleeping patterns wasn't the best. I was naughty all the time. So yeah, and I went through my bands at them stages of my career as well. So it was pretty hard for me. So
you use judo. So judo is helping you to control your behaviour and your interaction now without medication.
Yeah, 100%. Judo's helped me quite a lot. But I wouldn't say it's the all and end. It's still at times I'm still bad. You know what I mean? So it's an up and down thing, really.
It's interesting, isn't it, Maria, that Ashley describes himself as being bad, when actually this is a compulsive condition. And Ashley, luckily, was diagnosed with it young and has found sport and found a way to channel his energy and his compulsions. But as we heard from Jonathan, there are so many adults now who can perhaps would look back on your life. And Jonathan, I don't know if you'd agree, if you look back on your life before you were diagnosed and thought it was almost a failure or almost you hadn't achieved what you could have done.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the story of ADHD in adults, is that we don't don't fulfil our potential, and I think now that I have a diagnosis, I'm beginning to do that a little bit. I just thought I was rubbish. That was my that was the tag that I gave myself. You know, I can't do that because I'm rubbish. I can't cope.
Of course.
And what I realised, and Maria pointed out, you know, low self-esteem. It's a major issue for people with ADHD.
So Maria, what do you do if you're an adult, a child, anyone who is seeing perhaps signs and it's very difficult to diagnose, isn't it? What do you do when you're an adult? And the care, as you said, there are pressure on resources, isn't there?
I think it's very important to, first of all, compile a very clear list of what your symptoms are. So write it down and then prepare a list, and go and see your GP and talk to them, and don't take no for an answer. If there isn't any specialist services around in your area, ask for a referral to the National Service for a diagnosis.
OK, it's all we've got time for. It really has got people talking. Mike on Facebook has messaged us and said his daughter's 28, was diagnosed with ADHD 12 months ago. He's been told she cannot have any support, any adult social care. It's down to us, her family, to give that support. And of course, this is being reflected. And Donna on Twitter has thanked us for highlighting the condition. The stigma around this is shocking. Good luck to you all. Ashley, Jonathan, Andrea and Maria, thank you so much for joining us here.
Thank you.
Coming up after 10 o'clock.